Let's talk herd. Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining me on Soul Herd.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited to learn about the relationship training. Um, but what really fascinates me is where these journeys germinated, how it started for you. Like, was it something to do with what you felt you were doing with the horses, or was it something they brought to you, or both? Or that's where I love to begin, like where it all began, which might be years back, but yeah.
Yeah, I started riding as a young girl, a hunter jumper, going to my riding classes once a week.
Mm,
Then as adulthood came around, I got busy with work and everything and put riding aside and then got back into it, more into the
mm,
Western world. And something was missing for me. There
yeah,
was something that was just not working. It's I try not to look back too much and wonder how it was back then, but
mm,
what it felt like is that the horses were being compliant, they were being good, but the minute they were not, they were
mm,
like pushed aside or bullied or forced into,
yeah,
and that's the part that I was having a hard time with.
mm,
I'm like, something's missing in our relationship. So
mm,
kept going, and then I decided to study horse psychology and behavior. So back then it was mostly out of books. I read a study from a gentleman in France, and that
okay,
was a long time ago. I actually had to do a lot of research and archives in French in libraries in Paris to find the book and all that. And he did studies on horse psychology and behavior. And then I read a few of those and studied that, so that I wanted to understand what goes on in their mind when we are asking or we are wanting to do different things with them. How are they
yeah,
perceiving that message? What does it mean to them? Instead
yeah,
of training them like Pavlov dogs, to
mm,
training them to respond to a request, I wanted to understand, what are they getting from this? Do they like it? Does it go totally against their nature? So studied that and I learned a lot. And then
yeah,
started working with horses, mostly horses that were in rehabilitation, behavior issues, things like that. And it ended up being my whole career is horses that had issues, and
yeah,
which was really fantastic because I learned so much from working with horses like that. And then learned equine sports massage therapy, so I could learn physically. If there's a
mm,
problem physically, I want to be able to detect it. So I did things like T-Touch with Linda Tellington Jones. I did equine sports massage therapy, and I blended all that together. And then
mm,
there is an extra. I didn't know at this point that I was going towards relationship riding. I didn't know.
yeah.
This was just me learning and learning and learning. And there's a fantastic mare that came along the way and opened up the doors.
Mm, wow. What would you
Yeah.
say was the one thing that you can remember from that time of reading from the French author? I don't know if you can remember his name, but what was the
Gustave
thing
Le
you?
Bon. His name
Okay,
was, yeah,
okay,
Gustave Le Bon. Yeah. At the
yeah,
time, and I'm talking 30 years ago, he was already in his
yeah.
70s. He's
Wow,
no longer around.
yeah, yeah. That's amazing. So what was the sort of main thing you can remember from that time that really changed your perception
Well,
of
I
horses?
learned that what what we think is going on is not.
Yeah,
I learned that
okay.
the whole herd dynamic is a little bit different than what we interpret as humans. And
Mm,
then that led to exercises in the round pen. Why
okay.
does it every time we put a horse in a round pen or you go to trainers' challenges or things like that, they always do the same thing. They stop and look at you.
Mm,
What is that? And that I learned because we think it's, oh, they've decided to join up with us. They've decided to be with us. They think we're the safe spot.
mm,
That's not really what's going on. So
mm,
that was a
yeah.
real eye opener. And then I read a book by, I don't know if you've heard of Xenophon, who wrote a book
Oh,
2,500
yes.
years ago.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
explains bits. Bits have always been used to cause pain or the promise of pain. It's a control
Absolutely.
tool, and they always have.
Mm,
Whether it's a soft one or a cold bit or a baby bit or a rubber one or a snaffle, no matter what it is, a
mm,
bit is created to cause pain or the promise of pain so that
mm,
we can control the animal, so that we can get the results we're looking for or be safe. That didn't sit
mm.
well with me. That's not the relationship
Yeah.
I wanted.
It's that control paradigm, isn't it? It's like, it's so widespread. It's so profound. And I think it's quite hard to step outside of that and just see it for what it is, really.
And
Because,
that's
yeah.
another aspect of it is that's the physical aspect of control.
Mm,
And then
yeah.
as I learned more about horse psychology and behavior and I worked with horses, I realized that uh, that control is not always on a physical level. I call it dominance.
Mm,
It's a dominant. It
yeah.
also
Yeah.
happens on a psychological level and on an emotional
Absolutely.
level. And then came along the natural horsemanship movement,
Mm.
which gave
Yeah,
me
I so
an
agree with you.
opportunity to
Yeah.
see, okay, so you're not physically dominant, but we're still dominant
Mm,
on other levels. And I really wanted to eradicate that completely. It was like an experience for
mm,
me to see,
yeah.
can we really, truly, honestly have a relationship with horses without the safety net, without the dominance, without
Yeah.
saying, I have a bit, but I won't use it. I've got spurs, but I won't use them. I've got reins, but I
Yeah.
won't pull. Can we really, truly, honestly do that? And the horses
Yes.
have proven to me that you can. They taught me.
Mm, yeah.
They taught
That's
me.
so beautiful. Yeah.
And that's what my
Yeah.
book
I
is
love it.
about. The
Yeah.
book is about that journey. And what I wrote in the book is the technique, is the
Yeah.
background to how I got there. And
Yeah.
it's channeled by them. They taught me.
Yes, because that's what I want to ask you. I feel like I'm on a very similar journey with my herd. About, oh, maybe about 7 years ago now, I decided that we were just gonna dialogue, but in my case, it's through energy. So it's, and I learned that originally from craniosacral therapy, and then I learned more, that it's just energy, hands off, hands on. It doesn't,
Yes.
it's vibrational and it's communication. So how would you say that what's your interface? Because that's so fascinating. Like, is it because you observe behavior, or is it through energy, or are you communicating? How would you say you communicate? Because that's really what it is.
Yeah. It's communication. It's through communication. Um, and it's people sometimes when we say communication, they hear
Mm,
words. They think
yeah.
it's words because that's how humans communicate. With horses, and you probably know this, it's not words. It's knowings.
Mm,
It's energy. And people say, "How do you know?" Like I'll be working with a horse, and I'll say, "Your horse is this is going on." How do you
mm,
know? It's hard for me to put it into
mm,
words. I'm communicating with the animal in a space that we create together. So it's hard to put a label on it. It's energy, as you know. Sometimes we feel energy stronger than we feel. Sometimes it's just that voice in your head. It's a combination of
Mm.
things. The first time I heard a horse talk to me, it was like,
Yeah.
was that you?
Wow. Can you remember
But
that
it
first?
Oh, I'll never
Yeah,
forget
I'd
it.
love to hear
Yeah,
that.
so I had started this path. I was on this path of discovering, and I said, I need a horse. I need a horse
Mm.
to be able to learn and experience and see what I'm learning about horse psychology and behavior and all, and how they I needed a horse to be able
So
to
you
do
didn't have horses
what I
at
was
that point?
learning. So
Like,
I did on and off. I did on and off as I traveled, as I
okay.
moved, and but now I had moved to across the country. So I, when I got here, I had no horse, but I wanted to continue this process, so I had to find a horse. And I was working out of a barn, and there was a beautiful buckskin paint
Mm.
horse, absolutely
Mm.
beautiful, and that was for sale. And he was a little difficult. He had pain. He had saddle fitting issues and things like that. And I adored him.
Mm.
I just adored him. And he was stunningly beautiful. And so but he had what they called a puff on his back, on his hind leg,
Okay.
around his
Right.
hoof. It would come
Yeah.
and go. And I was in a situation where I didn't have a lot of money. And I said, I can't take in a horse that can go lame on me on and
Mm.
off, or that can have extensive vet bills and things like
Mm.
that. I'm going to need an animal that's ready to
Okay.
work. And one night I'm alone cleaning up the barn, huge, beautiful riding place. I'm cleaning up, turning all the lights off and getting
Mm.
ready to leave. And he was in a box
Yeah.
stall because he couldn't be out to pasture and all that. And he's in a box stall. And I just looked at him and I said, how I wish, that I could own you, that
Mm.
this wasn't existing on you. You didn't have this
Mm.
ailment. And, sent him some love. And as I'm turning around to leave, I heard him say very clearly, I have a puff because I want you to own me, not anybody else.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Yeah.
And I didn't buy him. I didn't go
Oh.
through with it. That was the first time that, because of course, all the doubts get into your mind.
Yeah.
It's like I look at him. Did you, was that you?
Mm.
And the
Absolutely.
first time you get the communication, you doubt it a
I
little
think
bit.
you need to.
You
Yeah.
never,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So I didn't go through with it, which is
Yeah.
okay because it was a
Yeah.
lesson for me to learn on this journey. And horses many have told me many
Mm.
things since. so so now I know what
Yeah,
it sounds like. I
absolutely.
know who's
Yeah.
talking. But yeah, it's but I did get the perfect teacher found her way to me, and Nikita, and and then I owned her two daughters, and they became huge in my learning and developing. But Nikita is the mare that started it all off.
Okay.
She's the one, and she's Andalusian. She's Azteca, so
Mm.
Andalusian cross was. She's passed now, and she's the one that started teaching me and showing me. And she came in as a horse that would buck, and
Mm.
ended up, I could do anything on this horse. And
Mm.
she just was such a talented teacher. So she taught me a lot. But I had her for a very short period of time.
Really?
Um, I owed a breeding when I got her.
Okay.
The owner said, I want one more breeding out
Right.
of her. I said, of course. And she died giving birth.
Oh,
So I thought that was the end of relationship riding. Suddenly I didn't know anything. And
she was in full when you got her.
yeah, no,
Okay.
not when I got her. I had 2 years.
Okay.
Within the 2 year period, the seller could request a foal. And so they bred her
Okay.
shortly. I had owned her only for a few years because I had her for 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, I had her for 5 years. So she did get a chance to teach me quite a
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
but still very short.
Yeah. It's
So
amazing how
when
they come
she
in like that, isn't it?
oh,
Just
and her too, I heard her voice very
yeah.
clearly. She actually told me, "This is the last time I'm seeing you."
Oh, yes.
She told me. The next
Yeah.
day she died. So it's planned.
It really
It's a
is.
journey. It's she knew. She came and I heard her voice again once she passed. And I felt I was alone in my car. I was crying. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know anything
Mm.
anymore, you know." And I heard her voice very clearly say to me, "You don't have to do this.
Mm.
We will find someone else." So when she said, "We will find someone
Wow.
else," it told, it kind of let me know that there's a consciousness.
Yes.
There's a horse consciousness. And so I said, "No, I want to do it, but you're gone." You, and she said, "We will find you the help you need. You'll have another horse."
That's amazing.
So it's like one teacher teaches you what you need to
Yeah.
know, moves on, and others come in. But she asked me if I was open to that, if I wanted to do it. And the voice was very comforting.
Mm.
And it was very much, "Don't worry if you don't want. There are other people who can do it. Don't worry." So that's why I know without a doubt there are a lot of us
Mm.
out there ready to receive these messages
Yeah.
and ready to make a change
Yeah.
because she told me. And she did find me
Yeah.
someone, and that someone was her daughter.
Wow.
And I got both her daughters actually. She
Oh,
had two
wow.
daughters and I
Also,
got
they
both
were
of them
previous.
just
Yeah, she'd had them
miraculously.
before, obviously, in her life. Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing. And
yeah.
did
Isn't
you
it?
seek them out or did you find out afterwards that they exist?
They found me. I tried to seek them out. I knew where one of them no, I knew where both of them
Yeah.
were. I was interested in one in particular as I had met her when she was just
Oh,
a year old or a year and a
yeah.
half, and she was all over me. I loved her. She was just fantastic. She's three-quarter
Yeah.
Andalusian, Azteca,
So,
just beautiful, beautiful girl. And but at the time, I said, "You're too young.
mm,
I can't buy you. You're
mm.
too young." So I bought mom. And then
Yeah.
funny enough, she found I knew who the owner was. I didn't have any contact information, so I contacted the lady who sold me the
Okay.
mum and said, "Okay, where's her daughter? How can I have the contact
Yeah.
info?" She said, "No, I don't give that out." So I said, "Well, could you give her the
Mm,
message to give me a call?" Because I knew she had
yeah.
the mare, but she was a lot to
Mm,
handle, and she, might be willing to part with
mm.
her. So months go by, and this lady just never gave her my contact information, never told her that I was looking for
Really?
the horse. No. And then suddenly it happened. I found her. I don't even remember exactly how it happened. I ended up going to visit
Okay.
her, and I saw the mare coming towards me. She looked exactly like her mom. And I was about to turn her down because I thought, "Oh my God, she looks exactly like Nikita.
Mm,
I can't, I don't want to confuse that, right? I don't
yeah.
want to." And then I
Mm.
said, "Hold on here. I've turned my back on one teacher
Yeah.
once. Let's see this through,"
Yeah.
right? So she was very green. She had had a trainer on her back and he had
Oh,
gotten
yeah.
bucked off. Andalusians are a little bit like Arabians. They're sensitive. You don't bully them around. They'll bully you right back. So in a way, that's perfect. That's exactly what I needed, right? So they brought her in. She had just been running around with cows on beautiful
Oh,
80
wow.
acres of land with her sister, and it's just being a
Yeah.
horse. So she came in, and they brought her in, and I only use bitless bridles and treeless saddles. So I'm very careful before I get on a
Mm.
horse. I think it's a bit of a
Yeah.
respect thing. You don't just grab and put a halter to
Mm.
tack and get on. I don't like that. So walked around with her a bit. We got to know, and it was a bit like finding an old friend because she was 5 years old by then. So it was a bit like finding an old
Mm,
friend and getting back and meeting someone I hadn't seen in a long time. But she was full of energy and excitement. So I put on the halter, the bitless bridle that I
yeah.
use, and walked her around a bit. And then I just felt it was fine to get on. I got on her and walked around, and it was like, wow. And the owner was like, she's barely started. And I could turn left and right and side pass and all that, and I'm having
Yeah.
fun. And so I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I knew the value of the horse. And
Mm.
I said, I know what she's worth. I can't afford that.
Mm, yeah.
So I left it with her. We walked away. By the time I
Mm.
got home, there was a message on my phone. She said, I don't
Mm.
want anybody else to own her. You give me what you can for her.
Oh,
She's yours. So
that's
when it's
sweet.
meant to be, it
Yeah. It's
happens.
so true.
She's still around.
Yeah.
She's 23. she's,
Oh,
she's still
that's
around.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's on the cover of my book. She's been an amazing teacher. So when Nikita said, "I'll
Incredible.
get you another teacher," she knew exactly
She
what
knew
she
what she
had
was
in mind.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did it start with Nikita?
It wasn't one specific thing. It was
Okay.
the first thing is I had to commit to creating no pain, fear, or discomfort on a
Yeah.
physical, emotional, and psychological level. That was my commitment, and I still go by that today. And it's very controversial to what training is, in the
Mm.
sense that if I ask my horse to pick up a lope and they don't, then I better put pressure and
Mm.
you better pick it up. I don't. I've
Yeah.
committed to
Yeah.
not. And people say, well, they're getting
Yeah.
away with murder and they're getting spoiled. Do you know what? Horses don't do that. I know
Mm.
now. Horses
Mm.
don't do that. Yes, they can have their
Yeah.
temperaments, they can play with you a lot on different levels. But if someone tells me my horse is spoiled because or lazy, that one I hear a lot. My horse is
Mm.
lazy.
Lazy.
Won't pick up its feet, won't move. I have to pound on it to move. Your horse is not lazy. It's not in the nature of a horse to be lazy. It doesn't
Mm.
exist. Your horse is telling you something that you are interpreting as lazy. And
Yeah.
that's what I,
Yeah.
I try to
Absolutely.
teach people. Try to see it another way.
Yeah.
So with Nikki, that's what it was. I said, my promise to her was no pain, fear, or discomfort on any level. And that was the same thing with Angelica and with anyone else. So if I asked to get on and they'd fidget like crazy at the mounting block and wouldn't let me on, I don't get on. I don't get on. And you can see how that having no agenda like that can be very difficult for people to embrace. They're on a schedule. They have a lesson coming up. They have only so much time to ride. Don't move. I'm getting on, regardless of. So they'll say, "Well, my horse is just being fussy. Doesn't like the mounting block. Doesn't like this." I hear it. I've heard. I probably heard it all. And with Angelica, I would climb up on a fence or on a railing,
Yeah.
and just a halter in hand, and with the lead rope. And horses speak a lot in mental images, like telepathy.
Mm.
So I would send her an
Yeah.
image of me sitting on her back. And I ask
Mm.
her, if you're okay with this, will you let me
Yeah.
on your back? And in my book, I actually describe how it happened the first time and all that. But that's what I would do. She would come and park herself perfectly so that I could easily put my leg over her and go. The times that she didn't do that, I didn't insist. And people ask me, can you train my horse to do that? Because that's fun to get on a horse that way. I'm like, no, I can't. You can. She does it because I ask her a question and she's fine with it. Are you willing to do
Yeah.
that? It's not a training. It's not a trick.
Exactly. It's just being open, isn't it?
It's
And
having a
being
relationship.
without. Expectation.
Yeah. Like
Absolutely.
with,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we talk about bits a lot or treat saddles. Treats. When I became an equine sports massage therapist, my first thing was like, well, a horse's back moves like a wave. You put a hard saddle on it. Well, then the wave doesn't move. So the rest of the body has to compensate, whether it's the neck or the hindquarters. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't work. So I never went back to a treat saddle ever. I never.
Yeah.
People say my horse won't collect, so they're yanking on the bit to make its head go down. I'm like, no, 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 that's not collecting.
Yeah.
You have to feel your horse lift, right?
Yeah, it's that feel, isn't it? Like it's the heart. It's
Yeah,
going from your heart. And I think when you do that, you just start to let go of all of it. Or you have to witness, you have to see the conditioning, like see, oh, I'm just using that saddle because I was taught to use a saddle like that, or that's what people do. And
tradition.
yeah, and once you start to really feel, then you just like the last time I have a horse here on livery, and I started. He just had a year, a couple of years, maybe it was even 3. I can't remember. Out with the herd, and we would visit him, and we did a lot of connecting with his energetically with his guardian, and then we kind of came round to asking him if he wanted to ride. And when I started that with him, it just felt like so natural not to ride with a saddle at all. And just, just to ride him with, I literally just put something on to stop me getting covered in hairs because he's grey. And it was
Yes,
just that, I just didn't, because before I had something called the total contact saddle, which is a very simple, it's just like a kind of thing that holds a band that holds the stirrups. And I quite liked that because I had but it was quite a big shift from because before that, when we did dressage, we had the strata saddles, which I think if you're gonna use a rigid tree saddle, it's probably the best option because it's actually shaped like a horse's back. But even so, I just
hmm,
that just didn't feel. I wanted to feel the horse. I wanted to feel them, underneath and yeah,
yes.
so then I went to this other one, and then you realize when you look back how conditioned you were. So that's I wanted to ask you about because for me it's really become a spiritual awakening. Like it's all about me, 100%. And have you found that like that's really what it is for you?
Well, yes, but now it's to a point that I wish other people saw it too,
Mm,
because the horses have so much to teach us.
mm, absolutely.
So, and one of the reasons I stuck to zero pain, fear, or dominance is because I look at them as my
Mm,
friends, as another human.
yeah.
For me, there's no difference really. So if I want to, if I, that's why I don't get on them right away.
Mm.
It's a little rude. It's like coming up and meeting someone for the first time and grabbing them,
Yeah.
like grabbing halters and
Yeah.
grabbing. It's not right. Um, and I actually use that when I do my clinics, and people laugh, but it's true.
Mm.
If you're not able to see your horse as an equal,
Yeah.
which it is, it's a soul, it's a spirit. So am I.
Mm.
We're just in different forms.
Yeah.
Well, we're still the same.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult for people to cross that threshold without being called, goo goo and tree hugger and all of
It is.
these.
That's a huge step.
But it is. But when you do embrace it, the feedback the horses give is, oh,
Oh, yeah.
it's real. It's authentic. It's
Mm.
intense. It's
Mm.
love. It's love. I've actually got at some point I asked the horses, why do you endure
Mm.
the pain, the abuse? Why?
Yeah.
And they explained to me that they're teachers.
And that, yeah,
I'm like,
that kind of,
it's hard to
yeah,
take.
yeah, it is.
You see bits with shanks this long, and
Mm,
the head is in perfect,
yeah.
perpendicular to the ground, and people go, "Oh, you're nicely trained." No, not nicely trained. It can't move its head without having that bit push against the palate of its mouth or the tongue and hurting
Mm,
him. He's got to have his head down so that bit stays in the
yeah.
hollow of his
And that
mouth.
doesn't,
And
that idea about what training is so backwards as well, because it comes from a complete ignorance of because I do think,
yes,
I mean, this is another road I don't really want to go down, but I do think there's a possibility to engage with a horse. Or I don't want to go down right now because I want to ask you about something else. But I think I
okay.
think engagement like can be something that isn't imposed by a bit or by the hands, or it can
Yes.
be, and that's my dream, to do that without any equipment. And I it's really funny because this is something that I would have thought totally impossible before. Like, how is that possible? Because even when you do it in a what I would call a kind biomechanically correct way, you're still channeling with, you're channeling them to be straight and all the rest of it. But if you believe in that energetic level of things, then anything's possible because the horse feels. They
Yes.
feel and they're alive. And if they're willing, it's a completely different thing, really. Yeah.
And it goes even a little bit further than that. You know, it even goes to the point where you feel like you're a team.
Yes.
It's not about
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
It's you want to connect energetically,
Yeah.
but the horse is all there saying, "Finally,
Absolutely.
here you are."
Yeah.
And you trust it and you go with it.